Well, let's go now to Alex Koning, a spokesperson for Just Stop Oil. Alex, I'll give you a right to reply to Sir Peter, first of all. He says that your actions, it's arguable at least, have forced the government to enact these laws.
Let's talk about who wants no new oil and gas in the UK. It's the UN, the International Energy Agency, the IPCC report made up of 17,000 different scientists, the governments of France, Sweden, Denmark, Scotland, Ireland, Wales. This is not just a Just Stop Oil demand. So many people are screaming out for this. So the easiest thing that the government can do is follow what's happening in the IPCC report, all the solutions of the climate crisis, and just stop new oil and gas instead of having to meet so many times and put through all these draconian anti-human rights laws to try and stop environmental activists, because ultimately, if we stop, the climate crisis does not go away.
So you would class these new laws as draconian then?
Absolutely, and so does the UN, so I think that's a dumb question.
The challenge for you guys, I guess, is that many people will say, yes, floods, wildfires, heat waves, they are a longer-term threat and a longer-term disruption to daily life than you sitting in the street or protesting at Pride, that it has far greater an impact. But the challenge for you is to get people on board with your argument and to get some consensus. And how do you balance consensus between also causing disruption?
This is also about being seen as well. And sadly, mainstream media such as yourself do not report on the climate crisis in the correct way. You talk about droughts, but you don't talk about the fact that crop production is going to go down by half by 2050, while demand is going to go up by 60%. Every single person is going to have, on average, half as much to eat in just 30 years' time. And you know as well as I that when people are struggling for food, that creates wars, that creates tension. Why aren't we talking about these kind of things instead of talking about, oh, it's 30 degrees right now, 1.5 degrees, Arctic ice? Let's talk about how this is really impacting people right now. What's happening in New York? What's happening with the Pakistan floods and the aftermath of these things? This is far more important.
So I go back to my question, how do you build consensus to get people to talk about that?
How do you build consensus? You're a BBC journalist. You should be telling people every single day about the greatest crisis that humanity has ever faced. And the same way with the COVID pandemic, it's spoken about on the news every single day because it was an emergency, and we treated it like an emergency, and we came together as a society and we did what we could. Look, civil resistance is not popular. It never has been. Look at the suffragettes, look at the civil rights movements. I don't want to go through the entire list, but there's a lot there. But every time it has worked because we need disruption to start the conversations, to speak about this issue, because otherwise it's not being spoken about. Think of it as we're the fire alarm. When the fire alarm goes off, do you stay in the building and discuss how noisy the fire alarm is, or do you get out the building, stop pouring oil on the flames, and start getting a fire extinguisher out?
With regards to this new law, which has been enacted today, obviously some of your members were at Pride yesterday. We saw some of those images earlier. We showed them to our viewers here on BBC News. With regards to this new law and these new police powers, which we heard about from Sir Peter Fahey as well, do you expect to change your tactics? Do you expect to change how you operate, or will you continue as you have done before?
Of course we're going to continue. As I said, like, if we go away, the climate crisis...
But there are other ways you can do it.
Please name them. I'd be delighted to hear them.
No, but you know as well as I do, there is a whole gambit of ways that you can raise an issue, and I'm just interested to see whether you think you will change that on the basis of the laws that could be pursued against your members. 3 years in jail, for example, if you potentially go and undertake tunnelling. Does that cause you a challenge? Does that change how you think you might go about things?
Yeah, 3 years in jail is obviously horrible, and I don't want anybody to go through something like that, of course. But we're talking about the tactics here. We've tried everything else for the last 50 years. We've tried voting. We've tried running for office. We've tried petitions, marches, rallies. None of that has had an effect. Emissions keep rising every single year. And right now, our government is pushing through over 100 new oil and gas licenses. And they've created a new coal mine because somebody thought that was a good idea. So no, we have to do what's effective. And in the last year, we've shown that civil resistance, these tactics are effective. Every single opposition party has now said no new oil and gas. That wouldn't have happened if we didn't generate this conversation about those 100 new oil and gas licenses.
Alex Koning, we appreciate your time joining us here on BBC News for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on.